Hey everyone, welcome to Metal Connect, where we get to meet one of the most incredible speakers, the people that spend time with us on Saturday at Metal. We get to have them hang out with us. We dive into what they're doing, hear their stories of success, challenges, and of course, where their passions and dreams are going. This individual is somebody that I would say in a lot of ways has changed the way we look and drive cars. Henrik Fisker is from Denmark. He is considered one of the top car designers on the planet. He's had some interesting stories. I hope he shares some stories with us when it comes to the companies and people that he's worked with. I'm honored to have him join us. Henrik Fisker, thank you so much. What are we looking at? What's behind you?
Well, this is the Fisker Ocean electric SUV that we're about to launch. By the way, I'm actually American since several years, but I was born in Denmark, so it counts for something. But yeah.
Dual passports?
Yeah, absolutely, because then I could travel easily around Europe without any restrictions. It's great.
So
like a little on, you pull out a couple of different passports.
Yeah, I love having different passports. But hey, so let's just dive into it. So we're looking at what is it and when does it come out and why is it so freaking unique?
Well, I think the next big frontier in electric vehicles is sort of value for money. Everybody always talks about how electric vehicles are more expensive than similar gasoline cars. And I think we're about to launch a vehicle in 2022, which I think will be even better value than a similar gasoline car. Secondly, our mission is to create the world's most sustainable vehicles. And that goes beyond making them electric. We have worked several years on finding sustainable materials. So for instance, all the carpets in this car is made from plastic bottles and fishing nets coming from our oceans worldwide, and it's recycled, and we make carpets out of them. We use a whole bunch of other recycled materials inside the vehicle. So ESG, environmental, social governance, a big part of our company. And I think just going through this whole COVID-19, I think it's become even more important. We just saw how quickly nature healed. And if we really come together and do something, it's amazing what we can do. So we want to contribute to that.
You're talking about the environment, just the pollution, how it all dissipated as we stopped driving around, moving around, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, isn't a lot of that pollution contributed also because of airplanes and boats and cruise liners and cargo vessels? I mean, that's another big factor there too.
Yeah, look, right now we are concentrating on cars, but in the end of the day, I think we're going to see a lot of mobility going electric, but I think we even have to look beyond that. There's also how you manufacture a vehicle, all the materials you use, and we want to be on the forefront of that. That's our mission, that's our vision, a clean future for all. So, we have kind of put together a bunch of people who really working for that. And we want to make some cool cars too, because at the end of the day, people buy a car, and nobody's going to buy an ugly, dorky vehicle just because it's environmental friendly. So if you can make it cool, exciting, and fun as well, you automatically have people involved in it, and I think that's the way forward.
So since you are, I mean, even when someone meets you, you dress, you're very fashionable. You and your wife are always looking great. When you look at design, you look at it with a very discerning eye. Cybertruck, up or down? What do you think on that design?
I have absolutely no comment.
Silence is golden, isn't it? Because you're a designer. You look at the thing going, what just pooped out of Tesla's butt? That's what you're probably thinking, right? No comment. Fine, we'll move forward. Let's step back and ask a very serious question. Why cars? What got you going when it comes to this?
Look, I don't know. I was a kid. I always loved cars. I collected little, Matchbox cars. And eventually, when I was supposed to, do equations in school, I was drawing cars in my notebook. And, my teacher said, you can't be a car designer. You can become an engineer. And eventually, my dad said, why don't you write a letter to Volvo in Sweden, which is maybe where you got this idea from.
That's it.
And so I did that, and I said, look, I'll sweep the floors, I'll do anything. And they said, no, you can forget that. We don't hire people like that. You got to go and get an education. There's this American school called Art Center College of Design in Pasadena and in California. So that's how I then got into that school and eventually graduated, started at BMW, designed the Z8 there, then went to Aston Martin, designed the V8 Vantage and the DB9, and that was kind of kickoff of my career.
I mean, think about that, guys. He designed those cars. Those are some of the most impressive cars out there. And then let's go to your own name, the Fisker, the Karma. That was, to this day, probably one of the prettiest cars you could ever see. Problem is, you can't get parts for it anymore, it seems like. I mean, you could buy them. They're fairly inexpensive because it's so hard to service them, right?
Well, we are going to bring that service back. So we are hoping to do something next year, launch something. There is still some independent service centers that are helping out and getting the car serviced, but we're going to elaborate on that. It was a very crazy story how all that ended up. You know, we were one of the first pioneers out there with that vehicle, electric sort of sustainable vehicle. And, you know, we launched that vehicle 1.5 years before the Tesla Model S, before anybody even cared about, you know, we had reclaimed wood from the California fires. We got the first vegan interior, and people were like, what does that mean? I mean, I remember Ashton Kutcher getting the car, and his assistant said, where do I plug it in? And I said, in the plug, just plug it in the plug. What do you mean? I said, plug it in the plug. And, you know, it was like that basic. You know, Leonardo DiCaprio got the first car. You know, this was so early on that people just couldn't even fathom that anything else but a golf cart could actually be driven electric. So, you know, our battery supplier went bankrupt. We had to go through a lot of tough stuff. But we've taken our lessons learned, started up. We are part of a big consortium, sourcing parts together with some of the biggest, one of the biggest car makers in the world. So we're back, and we're going to come up with some real cool products.
You can't mention cars without saying Elon Musk, because he's really great at raising money from the government. He's one of the best to get the government to give him money. What's your thought on going to a government or the US government, knocking on their door again and asking for some money?
So, you know, yeah, sorry. So one of the good things, Ken, is that my business partner, my wife, she is a financial genius, and she's just pulled off an amazing deal. I'm just a creative guy. You know, I loom around, I design a few cars and, you know, come up with some ideas. And, but she's really the financial genius. She only sleeps a couple of hours a night. She was just with 3 major banks. So we're pulling off, I think, one of the biggest financial deals you'll hear about. We'll announce it in about 4 or 5 weeks time. By the way, you guys here are the first to hear this, by the way. So it's going to be pretty amazing. So in 4 or 5 weeks, I think you'll read about it on the front page of Wall Street Journal, hopefully. It's a pretty big deal. And you need big money in the car industry. You do need billions, unfortunately. There's no way around it. Years of testing, certification, all that stuff. But yeah, we're doing that. And you know, because we have launched a car and we were the first ones, there's a lot of people behind it. And I think especially after COVID-19, people are just realizing we got to go environmental friendly. There's no way around it. And it doesn't mean we have to lose the passion for cars. You know, the excitement, all that stuff can still be there. But we just got to find a way that the cars can fit in to our society of the future, which has to be a clean, environmental friendly society.
Not answering the question about government money.
No, look, that was probably one of the worst things I've ever done, taking part of a government program, because you basically have half of the country hating you one way or another, depending on who's in power. And at the end of the day, you know, we're selling consumer products, and I want everybody to buy my cars. I don't care what race you are, what political opinion you are. But unfortunately, when you get involved with the government, you just alienate half of the people in the population. So when they came out with this PPE loan or whatever it was called here in COVID-19, I told my wife, I said, whatever you do, don't apply for that. I don't want it. I don't want any of their money. We're going to fix it ourselves. Let's cancel our salaries. Let's go down to half salary for everybody else. And that's what we did. That's how we just went through it. I didn't want to take any loans because it just doesn't work. You know, if you're in a consumer product, you can do it maybe if you make some funky chips, you know, microchips nobody cares about, or something else. But when you're in cars, it's just too prominent, and you just have to figure it out yourself, get private investors, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah. The Karma was a heavy car. Batteries, right? That's what made it so heavy. 4,500 pounds, was it?
You know, in the end of the day, even today, batteries are very heavy. It's going to be one of the difficulties and in electric cars. But don't forget, today we all have range anxiety, meaning we're all afraid that our electric car is going to run out of electricity. But once you drive an electric car, and I'm sure there's a lot of people here who has an electric car, initially you're thinking, I need those 300-mile range. And then you realize I really only drive 50 miles a day. I come home, I plug it in, I go next day. But we still like to know that we have that extra. It's just like horsepower. We all like to know we can go 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, but we only do it maybe 2 or 3 times to impress somebody, and then we kind of don't do it again because people puke in the car and don't feel well. Reality is that we all like to have excess, right? And that's the same with range. I think eventually that'll change when we get more infrastructure of charging network. And then we'll see batteries becoming smaller, but it'll still be fairly big batteries for the next couple of years. And yeah, that's extra weight. But I think we're starting to find new solutions, better battery packs, more energy density, better software. Software is a big deal, how you manage the batteries. So all this is coming together. So I think we are kind of in the next year or two. I would say by 2022, electric cars are pretty much passing the gasoline car in every aspect.
Wow. Except for use. I mean, people buying them, and it's still going to be gas cars will be primarily on the road.
Well, that's only because so look, you have a division in this industry, and it may happen in another industry. You have a established industry that has spent hundreds of billions with a B dollars in an infrastructure, meaning the manufacturing infrastructure, the supply infrastructure, and it's like an oil tanker. You can't turn it around like a speedboat. So you got a couple of speedboats, which is the startup companies like us and Tesla and a few others. Now we can do it, but the big car companies can do it. So they're pushing out gasoline cars for probably another 7 to 10 years because they want to get their money's worth. They're making money on it, and they're promoting the idea that we can't do without them. But reality is that probably I would estimate that about 80% of the US population would be better off with an electric car. It's much more fun to drive. It's more quiet. They can charge at home or charge it, at the gym. And maybe the rest of the 20% need a gasoline car, but we can't switch that quick. The big switch is probably going to happen after 2025. That's when we start seeing more than 25% of new cars being sold being electric.
Guys, you have a question for Henrik? Please put it inside the chat. I'll unmute you. Let's first go to Henrik. Henrik, what is your question for Henrik?
Hi, Henrik. Thanks so much for spending some time with us. The DB9 and the Vantage are both probably some of my favorite cars in the world, and still definitely
It's sex on tires. That's what it is. It's sex on tires.
Oh my God. I still get whiplash every time I see one on the road. So just want to say that. I do have 2 questions. It's okay if you can't get to both. The first one is I believe the battery technology is probably going to be the most important for the next, 50 years or so. What kind of battery technology are you using for your cars, and where do you see battery technology going in the next 10, 20, 30 years?
So I would say over the next 7 years, which is sort of the lifetime of a car and a new platform, if you want, or whatever you want to call it, the next 7 years, we will still have the same battery technology we have today. And the reason is, even if you invent if you came and showed me the most fantastic battery technology in the world today, I would need probably a couple of years to figure out how to mass produce it. Then I would need 3 years to durability test and safety test the battery, and simultaneously design the vehicle to fit that battery. So that means that you wouldn't have a new battery until 6, 7 years from now. So in the next 7 years, we'll have what we have today, but that will be a little bit improved. But the big improvement comes in the software, and which is the BMS, the battery management system, and the cooling. So we'll see batteries getting optimized maybe 10, 20%, and same with ranges over the next few years. In 7 years from now, I can't predict if it's going to be 7 or 8 or 9, but the next generation of battery technology, everybody believes going to be solid state battery technology. We have dabbled a bit in it. We have some patents, but nobody has really truly come up with a viable solution yet, because you have to be able to mass manufacture a battery, spit out a battery cell every second. It's got to have the right cost, the right safety and everything else. So nobody has that technology yet. There's a lot of people working on it, but when that comes out, that will be the real big change. But honestly, I think that in the next 2 or 3 years, the general battery technology we have today will be so improved that it will be better than what you can get in a similar gasoline vehicle.
All right, let's go to Cooper. Cooper, which is Dr. Michael Bruce's son. Cooper, you have a question for Henrik.
Hi. Yes, and I'm also a big fan of you, Henrik. I love the Z8 and the DB9, DBS, and the Vantage. I think they're fantastic designs. I felt like, when you came out with the Fisker Karma, you and Tesla really had the opportunity to make electric cars cool. And that was like one of the first real instances of that. And I think you guys started a trend. Do you, as a company with Fisker kind of reopening and starting with the Ocean, feel that you have a responsibility to keep innovating and creating like new cool ideas with electric cars? Or are you focusing in specifically, being eco-friendly, or are you focusing on other aspects as well?
No, yeah, absolutely. Look, I think anybody who does anything have a responsibility in your own area to do whatever you can to create a better world. And if you can make money on it as well, even better. But, I think we live in times where everybody needs to contribute. Look, I don't know how to sing. I don't know how to cook except for grilling some pretty good burgers. So, I'm going to make cars, and that's where I have to do the best I can. And yes, absolutely. My goal is to innovate, come up with the coolest, hottest design. I mean, one of the unique things about America is a consumer-driven society. You can't just put some crap out there and say it's environmental friendly. Nobody's going to buy it. So it has to be sexy. It has to be cool. And look, the Fisker Ocean is the first vehicle. I can guarantee you the next 2 vehicles will be extremely radical, very sexy, very unique. And that's what we're going to do. We want to entice the customers so much they go, wow, I just want that thing. I mean, I remember the first people who bought the Fisker Karma, they didn't even know it was electric, that was a plug-in hybrid. When the car arrived in the garage or they went to pick it up, they go, what's that? And they go, oh, you can also plug it in. They didn't even know, they just bought it because it was cool. So I think if we can create products like that, we will eventually prevail and we will see people migrating towards electric cars.
All right, let's go to Stu Heineck. Hey, Stu, question for Henrik.
Ja, first, hi Henrik, hvordan har du det, min kone fra København?
Hi.
And it's a pleasure to talk to you a little bit of Danish. I was curious. I asked in the chat what you might think of the Bollinger B2, but I think more usefully, what should electric cars and vehicles look like?
So I think, in the end of the day, because you switch to a new technology, I don't think you need to make something that is awkward or funky. I think beauty is something that we all love, and it's a benefit in our life and our society. Whether you drive by a beautiful building, whether you go and have a meal where the chef has prepared it beautifully, I think that's part of our life and it's part of enjoyment of life. And I think with cars it's the same. I think with electric vehicles, there's no reason why they shouldn't be beautiful. Now, there's certain things that automatically will change in the design of an electric vehicle. We don't need quite as much cooling high up on the vehicle. We can take the cooling lower down. We don't need such a long, tall hood because there's a small electric motor and not a big gasoline engine underneath. Right now, we're going to be putting the batteries under the floor, which will change the proportions that people sit higher, which is good for a lot of vehicles. However, it makes it more difficult to make a cool 2-seater low sports car. So we're gonna have to work on how do we deal with that. So there'll be some design challenges and some advantages, but I think ultimately people wanna have a cool, beautiful car. It's just like, you're not gonna wear a suit that makes you look like an idiot because it's fireproof or, it doesn't stain. So, we gotta make stuff that fits in people's life and they love and they feel emotional about. And I think that's what that we want to do. I think there's been too many failed environmental vehicles out there that just look too dumb and nobody wanted to buy. So I think we're now reaching the point where you will see, I hope, a lot of cool electric vehicles for sure, we want to lead in that. We want to be number one in that, and that's what we're aiming at.
Again, you have a question for Henrik, please put it inside the chat. Henrik, it's not just about the car, it's about distribution. It's about getting the car. That whole supply chain's been fairly broken or frustrating for many consumers. How do you want to change that?
Yeah, so I think, all service always show that nobody likes to go to a car dealer, and, you go in and you are told the car is this, and then you get a discount, and you're told, I'm sure all of you have had this amazing pleasure of buying a car for invoice only, and you think the poor guy that's selling it to you doesn't earn any money. And of course that's not true, because then he wouldn't sell it to you. So the car makers, they give these amazing incentives so they can show you that you think you're buying it for invoice, but they still make $5,000 on the car. Those are all these tricks the car dealers do. So I think that, a lot of people don't feel comfortable that, and in the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to cut the middleman out. I mean, it's already done in so many other areas of what you buy today online, etc. And the car makers lose huge amount of money with car dealers. That's the one area. The other area is spare parts. So we have set us forward to completely disrupt the business model of a car company. First of all, we'll only sell direct. We have created an app that is a Fisker app. You can download it. We started last year. We already have thousands of orders via that app, which means we can lower our price of our vehicle. Secondly, because we don't have dealers, we have signed up a deal with a group called Cox Automotive. They do fleet service and fleet management and logistics. So we'll pick up your car for service. An electric car doesn't need scheduled maintenance. So we'll pick it up when it needs service. You'll just send a message via the app, and we'll see it over the air. And we'll pick up your car, take it for service, bring it back. So the service center doesn't need to be an expensive palace, with cappuccino machines and leather seats and all that, where you can sit in. So basically, we take the car to this warehouse, get service, you bring it back. So that's lower cost. Now, with all that, what we also decided was we're not going to mark up the spare prices like car companies normally do via themselves and the dealers. So if you have a BMW 3 Series and you crack the front bumper, you go to the dealer, that bumper will probably cost you about $1,500 to change. The actual cost of that bumper, you'll be surprised. The actual cost of that bumper is probably only $100. That's how cheap it is. Now, it's marked up because once you have bought a car, you are lost to the car maker. You're no more client, you're gone. So they want to find ways to keep making money on you, and they know you can't go to a Nissan dealer and put on a bumper on your BMW. It just doesn't fit. So you gotta have to go back to BMW, and that's why they can charge what they want. So what we decided was we're not gonna upcharge for our spare parts. Instead, we're gonna call up the insurance companies, and we're working with them right now and saying, hey guys, if our spare parts are so cheap, you got to lower the insurance for our customers. And so we are working on lowering the insurance. We hope around 30%. And we think that's going to be a really strong attraction and a way to keep our customers in the Fisker ecosystem. Because today, some people actually pay more in a monthly payment and insurance that they pay for the car, which is crazy. So we want to lower the insurance. We want to make the whole ownership experience lower cost and more enjoyable, more hassle-free. So everything is digital, everything is direct, and that's what we're doing. And I think that's going to be revolutionary.
You wet our whistle back in 2013 when you announced the Atlantic. Anything like that pop? Because even this 2013, 7 years ago, was way ahead of its game today. So, join with some ideas.
It'll be even cooler than that. Just wait, Ken. You're gonna see. You're gonna be amazed. You're gonna fall backwards. We're making some really cool cars. So we are very excited about the first 3 cars we make will be affordable premium. Eventually, we'll come out with some super luxury cars. But in the car industry, you have to have some high volume cars to make money, because every time you develop a new car, you have to spend about $1 billion. So you got to make some serious cash to be able to reinvest, which is why all the super sport car companies today, are luxury car companies, are owned by somebody else because they don't make enough money, like Rolls-Royce, owned by BMW, Bentley, owned by Volkswagen Group, Porsche owned by Volkswagen Group. So, I mean, Aston Martin is still independent, but almost going bankrupt, and Ferrari makes it because of racing, but those are very unique. Even Lamborghini is owned by Volkswagen. So you got to get into the high volume segment to generate enough cash to make the cool, expensive cars. But we will do that.
One of the smartest guys. We got to bring him on here, Dejer. Dejer, of course, he drives flying motorcycles, and he's been looking at electric planes and all kinds of cool stuff. Hey, Dejer, first, Dejer, it's great to see that you're here. What's your question for Henrik?
Hi, Henrik. My Dejer Molnar. So very quickly, I built Craig Breedlove's land speed car. So I raced for the sound barrier for the U.S. And I've been doing built private rocket ships, and then I've been doing flying motorcycles for about 15 years, and I'm doing an electric one now. I'm finding a great advantage. A lot of people, as you know, Hyundai's getting into the they call it the flying car business effectively. Also Toyota, they have vertical takeoff machines. It's VTOL stuff using electric motors, and they've maxed out the batteries and stuff there. I think they're going in the wrong direction. Effectively, I'm interested in knowing if you are interested in getting into the flying car space, and also just simply for the range anxiety of your customers, have you considered tandem seating or any of those arrangements in order to get a lot more distance with less aerodynamic drag for some of your future designs?
And you also want to know about hydrogen.
And yes, and hydrogen. Are you considering hydrogen?
Okay, so that's a lot of questions. Look, first of all, I mean, the reason we got into the whole new battery development is because we realized that energy density is super important. We had a lot of groups coming to us as making flying cars, flying motorcycles, whatever it was, because energy density, as you know, once you get into the flying, area, you need a lot of power, specifically in takeoff, and
Yep.
you spend so much power in that by the time you're up in the air, you run out of power. So I totally get that. So that's the one thing. In terms of, are we getting into flying cars? Look, it costs already billions to make a car, so we are concentrating on that right now. We are trying to kind of focus our area of expertise. I wouldn't exclude them in the future. I think what's going to happen in the future is that you are going to buy mobility from a brand, and that brand could offer a range of mobility from a scooter to a car to a flying motorcycle to a flying drone or whatever. And it may be made by different people, but I think we're going to go for buying from brands. Like you go to a supermarket brand, like if you want to buy organic food, you go to Whole Foods, but Whole Foods don't make all that food. It's made by some other suppliers, but you go because you trust that brand. And I think that could happen in the future as well. And mobility is one of the things we have to solve for the future in terms of congestion and in the environment. So that's something we're all working for, and you are as well. I think when it comes to hydrogen, the difficulty generally in the automotive world, I mean, think about it. It took the automotive industry 100 years to decide to kind of start dabbling into electrification. And when Tesla and Fisker started, it was back in 2000. I mean, we started in 2007. Tesla actually started way back in 2003. And, now we're 2020, and we barely have an infrastructure. So one of the difficult things is the infrastructure. So personally, and that's just my personal opinion, I think hydrogen for cars it's a great idea. A lot of engineers love it, but I think you're looking at minimum 20 to 25 years before we have any significant amount of hydrogen cars because of the cost, and we need a new infrastructure. The cool thing about electrification is that you can charge your car at home. So that is a big advantage. And now many different groups, both car companies and independents, have already poured billions of dollars into this new infrastructure. So I think hydrogen, where it's going to come first is commercial. So that means either trucks or potential planes, because you now have a set route. Whereas the problem with individual human beings like us, we're unpredictable. We change our mind. We don't plan. We're not organized. We don't follow a process. We're going to the supermarket, but then we decide to go for an ice cream and we go a different direction and we didn't know it was going to be that far. And so we want to have ability to fuel wherever we want it. So that's why individual cars are much more complicated. Whereas I think commercial traffic, whether it's in the air or on the ground, would be the first one that would use hydrogen.
There you go. Let's go to Jace. Hey, Jace, your question for Henrik?
Yeah, so nice to meet you, first of all. I was very fortunate last year to go to BMW's Next Gen event, because I'm really curious about the evolution of technology, 5G, how that's going to affect, driving cars, AI, and I got the pleasure of getting to explore their LiDAR systems. But one thing that came up during my conversations with the BMW team, they were talking specifically about AI and data pools. So I dug into it and I was looking at Toyota and what they're doing with AI data pools. And I just want to know what your stance is on, how we're going to collect this much data, and the process of which is AI going to make autonomous driving arrive faster than most people believe, I guess.
Yeah, so I think the whole thing about machine learning and data is that what we want to do is we want to be able, on one hand, to learn and do better products, and then we can also use data directly consumed from the consumer and understand how consumers drive. So one very simple example is when the car industry today tests a gasoline car. What they'll do is they'll take it up to top speed, then they'll brake like insane, and they'll do it like 10 times, and they'll do all these insane things to make sure that in worst case scenario it works. Now, if you do that same type of testing with an electric car, what happens is that if you want to use a big part of the battery and you, let's say, accelerate up 10 times and brake 10 times, and then you charge the car up fully, and then you deplete it completely, and you do that 10 times, you pretty much burn out the battery. So what we have figured out, and I think what Tesla's have figured out as well, is that nobody really do that. So therefore, we're willing to take a risk and saying, you know what, we can give you a longer range because we doubt that anybody truly is going to drive the car to zero and strand somewhere and then fill it up again fully. Now, that doesn't matter with a gasoline car, but a battery car does. So what machine learning and all this will teach us is how do people truly drive the vehicle, and then we can adapt the vehicle to fit that driving pattern and therefore increase the efficiency. So I think that's where all the machine learning and AI come in. I think when it comes to fully autonomous vehicles, don't get me started on that. I have a different opinion than probably every other automotive executive in this world because they're trying to sell this technology. I think we're very, very far away from having cars without steering wheels randomly running around. I mean, I can just give you such a simple example. You're driving behind a FedEx truck on a one-way street with a double line. That FedEx truck stops to, drop off a package. The guy's gone for 10 minutes. Your autonomous car is supposed to stand behind him and wait. If you drive your own car, you are going to break the law. You're going to go out. You're going to see if there's anybody coming. If there's nobody coming, you're going to pass that double line. And most likely, if there was a police car right behind you, he's going to let you do that because it's common sense. But you cannot program an autonomous car to do that, because if there's an accident, then you just programmed a vehicle to break the law and potentially kill somebody. So there's so many issues in our today's traffic. The autonomous car works really well in a utopian society, but we can't even fix the pothole, down I have the same pothole down my street for 10 years, the same pothole. And we're talking about all cars being connected and everything being autonomous and everything being perfect. It's just not going to happen anytime soon. Now, what we may have it is some closed areas, some little buses and stuff like that. That's going to be great. But, a fully autonomous car with no steering wheel for a private person that maybe doesn't clean his cameras on his vehicle, it's very far away. So I think you have to separate the two.
Henrik, it's hard to be an entrepreneur. It really is. And I know you've gone through some interesting perils. Can you tell us about one of your hardest moments being in this industry? What was that challenge and what picked you up?
Look, there was a lot of hard moments. I think one of the craziest things about it being an entrepreneur is when it's high, it's super high, and when it's low, it's really super low. And because you don't really have that safety net you have when you work in a corporate world. You just don't go out and get another job quickly, or you don't get an exit when your company goes bankrupt. Probably my worst time ever was when I left Fisker Automotive, my original car company. I disagreed with the board, and I had to leave for ethical reasons. I knew I gave back. When you leave, I had no shares, no ownership. And I didn't own a car because obviously I had company cars. So I went down to the local dealer, LA car guy, and I actually bought the car I designed. And I bought it the night before because I knew the next day I would be unemployed and I wouldn't be able to get it financed. So I could tell him with a straight face that I had a job. I signed the contract, bought it, and the next day I quit. But the real worst thing was to have kind of, lost and left, 10 years of hard work, something that I truly believed in. I've given everything. I put all my money in it. That was really tough. And then you go through the time where, because my name was on the building, it doesn't matter who did what, I got all the blame for it. And yeah, that's just the way it is. And then you have to read about that for a couple of years, all kind of fake news and funky stuff that people make up. But then what really picks you up, I think for me, it was my wife, to have a partner that believe in you when nobody else does. When you think you're a nobody and you're just, a dog shit on the street or whatever. That's a tough thing to pull yourself out of, because, you're not employable, right? Because you start your own car company. I mean, who's going to hire me? So it was a tough time to get out of. But all that said, it made me so much smarter. It made me a lot tougher, being able to take tougher, quicker decisions. And it really made me look different on calculating a risk. It makes me different and of how to hire employees, who to trust, how to set up a structure. So that was like unbelievable learnings that I've now applied in my new venture. And I thankfully, we live in a country, America, where people appreciate the learnings, and they appreciate the learnings from failures. And there's nothing more than learning from a failure. I mean, success makes you blind. You ride on a wave, you think you're a god, you don't even see any speed bumps, you don't even feel them because everything is going great and you have very little lessons learned. So to have a failure, I think, is extremely important, because that's really when you understand your own pitfalls and maybe even the type of people you have to hire to make sure that you're covered.
Your wife, Geeta, is truly a warrior. She really is. She's not just a workaholic, but very, very focused, tactical. Did you feel, and I'm asking this because I think many of us men go through this, when we lose our identity because either we lost the business or we're not there anymore. Did you feel insignificant for a period of time when you didn't have the business, and seeing her just striving fast and moving forward? Did she pick you up? What happened during that time? You understand where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah. No, look, I don't think I felt insignificant, but of course you don't get invited to the big parties during those times and all that stuff. And, so you obviously.
I invited you to a big party. You didn't show up.
I think what happens is you start, first of all, you start reflecting. I mean, it's great. It doesn't necessarily have to be a wife, but it's great to have somebody, whether it's a good friend, whether it's a childhood buddy that takes you for who you are, whatever it might be, but to have somebody that you can talk to as a human being, about many different things, I think is important. But when you're on that path back, I think the most important thing for me was to it's almost like falling off a horse and they tell you have to get back on right away. I think it's very important not to feel sorry for yourself and drown and, everybody hates me. You got to get back up. You got to get out there. You got to use your talents that, you have and why you were there in the first place. And you can't doubt yourself. You got to believe in yourself, that what you actually are good at, you are good at. There might be a ton of reasons why you failed, and it may not be anything to do with your own talent, what you're good at. It can be, the wrong financials, this and this, whatever it might be. I remember we were about to go public, and Greece went bankrupt, and we couldn't go public. I mean, who would have predicted that? So, there's just certain things in life that happen. We lost our last 350 cars. Like, I was so beaten. And I remember sitting thinking, well, at least we got 350 cars sitting in the port in New York. They have a value of 35 million. I'm safe. 5 days later, Hurricane Sandy hit and wiped out those 350 cars. And on top of that, we had a 700-page solid insurance agreement. So I thought, okay, at least we'll get maybe 20, 25 million. But on page 693, paragraph 2, it said, if the vehicles were placed below the water line on any harbor, it will not be covered. And in that particular part of the harbor, because we were the smallest car company, not Toyota, not Volvo, and everybody else that was there, but we were put in that corner of the harbor, which were 2 inches below the water line.
Jeez.
So, you know, those type of things you just can't plan for. And you just got to have perseverance. You got to move on. And you have, the most important thing, I forget very quickly. Like I will forget a guy that I had a big fight with a week ago. I don't remember his name anymore. So, you know, you just got to forget and you got to move on. You got to be positive. You got to be focused. That's what I believe in.
All right, let's go to Richard Burke. Richard, you have a question for Henrik?
Yeah, hi, Henrik. First off, these guys are forgetting that Z8. That Z8 was gorgeous, a gorgeous BMW Roadster, and it's one of the few that you did that is worth far more than it was brand new. Isn't one of the innovations you're really working on also the fact that you're leasing the car on a subscription basis? And can't that only be done now due to the Tesla cracking the dealer franchise stronghold on the auto industry?
Yeah, I haven't mentioned too much about that because it's sort of a very complicated business model that we worked out. And it's even more than the dealer model as well. That's a big factor. The other factor is what I mentioned before, our spare parts pricing, because what happens is we are planning, think about our vehicle subscription model or lease model as if you're owning an apartment building and you're leasing out the apartments. So when somebody leaves the apartment, you repaint it and you lease it out again. So you get a reoccurrent revenue, something the car industry is not very good at. It's always a one-time sale, get it out the door, next sale. So we have developed this flexible lease. You can give the car back anytime you want. You of course lose your upfront deposit, but if you lose your job or you want to move or you don't like the car, anytime you can give it back after 5 days, 5 months, 5 years. And we keep the asset, we own the asset. And the advantage here for us is because we do the maintenance, it's very low cost for us because we get the lowest cost of the parts. We have the unique service model, and we can then pass on some of these advantages to the customer by having a very low lease. And the other part of the low lease is that we can actually push our profits over an 8-year period, which is really adventurous for us. And because we'll have also several type of consumers in this lease over 8 years. So if you think about the first person leases this car as new, and he might be 40 years old, great career. The second guy or woman is 30 years old, just starting the career. The third person is a young first job. And the fifth person is a college student where the parents gave it to them. During this, we get all these new customers, but we also do something very unique, which I think we're going to have huge advantages. When this vehicle is 5, 6, 7 years old, we're still going to give 100% full warranty.
Wow.
So now you think about, you want to give your kid a 5-year-old something or a 5-year-old Fisker with full warranty, everything covered for a great price, serviced always by us. So that's what we think we can create a unique market segment. And by the way, the monthly lease starts at $379 a month, everything included, even tire changes and new tires.
That's
30,000 miles a year.
30,000 miles a year.
Wow. Henrik, that's impressive. It really is. Watch, you probably know Raul Sanad, who tried to do something called Test Loop. Do you know Raul?
Yeah, I don't know if I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that came out of metal, by the way. Test Loop came out of metal. Maybe he should start getting a bunch of Fiskers and start doing it again. Let's go over to Jeff. Jeff, you have a question for Henrik. Go for it, Jeff.
Hey, Henrik. I did a mixer, an event back at your LA Car Guy Santa Monica dealership years ago. It was a lot of fun. Loved your cars, and they weren't around when I went back to want to buy one. But I would love to see a 4-door convertible come out. That would be just first in line.
They'll
for
make
that.
one just for you.
What kind of plans do you have for convertibles?
So we definitely have a plan for convertible. I love convertibles, and we will do something really, really unique. And I can't reveal what it is yet, but you're sort of in the direction. It's generally been very difficult to do 4-door convertibles since the 60s, because in the 60s there was very few safety crash rules, and the cars used to be pretty twitching, and you didn't have all the side impact rules. So you need to be really innovative if you want to be able to do that. But we're planning something really cool, and I think electric convertibles anyway is a great thing, because you don't have the exhaust fumes, they're quiet, they're cool. So we're looking into something.
Michael,
I actually misspoke. I meant 4-seat convertibles, not 4-door convertibles.
Well, either of the two.
there you go. 4-seat, 4 doors, maybe a 6-door. Let's go to Michael. Michael, you have a question for Henrik.
Yeah, Henrik, what about tire technology? Obviously you're taking the expense of that, from the dawn of time, the Teslas burn up tires, the torque,
Big
the
time.
weight. So what's going on that front?
Yeah, look, we obviously don't make tires at the time, but we work with the tire manufacturers. So there's several areas of tire technology. First of all, one of the big things that's getting developed now is low noise. So it's a noise cancellation, because noise is much more prevalent on an electric car. Then there's low rolling resistance, which means you get a longer range. Of course, there's a trade-off with low rolling resistance. That means you have less grip, which means it isn't going to be as sporty. So that's, again, you got to find that nice combination. And then finally, there is smart tires, where hopefully we can predict when you need to change a tire in the future. So there is a lot of stuff going on in terms of, how often you need to change the tires. Look, when you have a lot of torque and the vehicle is heavy, you're going to burn up more tire. And on top of that, high performance tires are softer, so they also wear out quicker. So everything in that area is a trade-off. I mean, you can buy some.
I know, but boy, those Bridgeports are expensive.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that you're including that in the service package,
It's amazing.
at $379, because I look at my friends with Teslas and it's $1,000, $1,600, maybe $2,000, because
Every
these
year.
rim packages
Every year.
these rim packages are custom to these Tesla cars. So fascinating.
Hey, Mike,
Fascinating.
you're just reminding me of something. We might have to prohibit a burnout too often.
Yeah, you might have to fix that in one of your clauses. Hey, thank you very much, Michael. Bo, I think Bo is in. Hey, Bo, you're in Vietnam. Bo, I think you're outside. Let's hear how you sound. Bo, what's your question? Turn on your camera, please.
Wow.
There you are, Bo.
Hey guys. And that's not a backdrop, that's real.
Where are you?
I'm on the beach about 20 minutes south of my house.
In Vietnam.
And
Rub it in.
welcome to Vietnam.
Yeah. Go for it, Bo. What's your question?
So I was just taking a tractor out, so I don't know if you guys got to my question. My question is to you, Henrik, about just going public with Tesla's stock price being so, completely absurd as far as I look at it. As far as how many units today, JD Powers just rated it as one of the worst cars out of the gate for problems. And then Nikola, which is coming out with a semi truck, and their stock price is mental as well. And I go, they haven't even sold any units. And last time you spoke, you said the profit margins on cars is terrible. And I would imagine on semi trucks, it's even worse because a lot less units. So what are your plans for going public? Which seems like a big, easy way to grab cash.
Well, first of all, if you're in any way thinking about going public, you can't speak about it. So I can't speak about it. Secondly,
oh, thank God. All right, move forward now.
Secondly, I think that what I think the investors at Wall Street and whoever else invests in electrification is really buying into is obviously a dramatic disruption in the automotive industry. So you're not really evaluating these electric car companies right now on their performance. You are betting on that in 5 or 10 years, depending on who you are, there could be a dramatic shift, kind of like what happened with Kodak or what happened with Nokia. And I think something like that could happen in the car industry. I mean, you look at, I hate to call anybody out, and I won't, I'm going to have to give an example, but it doesn't mean it's a bad company. I love, Ford Motor Company is an iconic company, but the fact is that they only have one car left, which is the Ford Mustang.
Yeah.
Everything else is trucks, and they used to, I think, own 30-40% of the American market. I don't know what they are today, but it's a fraction of that. Globally, they're becoming actually kind of a small car company. Tesla is outselling BMW in certain markets. Those are things, if you told people that just 5 years ago, they would have shaken their head and said, that's never going to happen. Just like when you ran around with your Nokia flip phone and said, what if Apple computers would make a phone? Everybody would laugh. So it's never going to happen. So, I think that people are betting on that some huge disruption can happen in the automotive industry. And I think we're seeing a few early signs of that. Young people do not have this affection or blind believability in traditional brands.
Right.
Like when we grew up, you could not imagine your father or even yourself buying a vehicle which couldn't be serviced on the corner, which means it had to be a known brand. And I think that's changed. I think young people don't care. They're willing, if Apple made a car, young people will buy that car. If NVIDIA made a car, young people will buy that car. And I think there's some signs showing that the established car industry can't just cruise along and make the old stuff they've always made and think they're going to make it. It isn't going to happen. And there are some people on Wall Street that's betting that could be accelerated by electrification, because the fact is that most of the traditional car companies are way behind in electrification. And this is nothing to do with, I hear this story all the time. Yeah, but what about some of these big car companies? They sell 1 million cars a year and they got, 50,000 engineers. Well, you know what? If you got 50,000 cooks that knows how to make hamburgers, that doesn't mean they know how to make a French gourmet meal. And, that's the problem. That is a completely different thing to make an electric car, to create software. It is not the same thing. So that's the issue that you're facing. You've got these conglomerates with the wrong departments, the wrong people, the wrong education, the wrong infrastructure that will take hundreds of billions of dollars to change.
You're just saying the legacy just can't stick around. You even have a manufacturing idea of utilizing idle time of other manufacturers, which is brilliant. I'm going to try to get 2 more questions in before we end this. Ron, your question for Henrik is?
Yeah, I was funny because my company was invested in by Kleiner Perkins, and I was with Ray Lane when the day he got your car. So I was able to drive that first Karma. And I tell you the truth, I've never forgotten that ride. It was, as you said, it was completely early on in electric cars, and the Silicon Valley approach was to put a battery in a box. And here comes this beautiful, I thought the beauty preceded the technology. And I'm wondering, I know you went through a lot of stuff with Kleiner, and I know in the beginning Ray was a super fan, and when Ray helped you raise that government money, he actually mentioned to me he was a little saddened by it because he wasn't sure that was the best thing for you. And so I wonder if you were able to preserve any of those friendships from then. And I also wonder what cautionary tales, because here you are, we're all talking IPOs, which I've also gone through, which sets you up with another bunch of ruthless people that are in control of and influence your destiny. So do you see a path, any cautionary tales from those Kleiner days to young entrepreneurs here? And do you see a path different from an IPO where you might have more independence, or with your genius financial wife, which you probably could have used more back then. You
And
see a
she's
way to protect
beautiful.
yourself.
And she's beautiful. So you,
No,
she did it
I
all.
didn't have my wife back then. This is my second marriage, so it was a different situation. But look, first of all, I still talk to Ray. He's a great guy, amazing guy, and I think first of all, this was my first big venture. I jumped out of this. I quite frankly weren't thinking about ownership and voting structure and all these crazy stuff that you learn about once you do it. So believe me, I'm doing all that right now. I think one of the worst things I've heard generally from financial investors from Silicon Valley is that they always tell you it's better to own a little bit of a lot than a lot of a little bit. And they usually tell you that when they're just about to take most of your company away and leave you with 1% or less. So my lessons learned there, and we are practicing it right now at Fisker Inc., is that I want full control of this company, because if I'm going to work 7 days a week, 20 hours a day, I want to make sure that this is going to work. I was too quickly convinced by investors to just hire an industry executive. What I've learned is that super seasoned industry executives working in big companies, they don't really work well in a startup, because it's not a well-oiled machine that they can come in and just kind of put some oil on it and runs. So I think it's very important that a founder stays alert and also understand that they may not be able to do everything. You got to hire the right people around you. You may not like the financial area, then have a great CFO, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's some of the lessons learned that I've seen. It's very difficult when you do something the first time. You're going to do a lot more mistakes than the second time. That's just clear. But I think that doing an IPO, it really depends on your capital needs. So in my area of what we are doing, unfortunately, I think the car industry is so capital intensive that there is no other way that you have to go public eventually, because you cannot raise, hundreds and hundreds of millions in the private segment, eventually billions. It's just not possible. It's very rare. There's some extreme examples, like crazy stuff where Jeff Bezos put some money in or something like that, but it's not done like in a normal capital raising way. So I think if you're having a private venture where you're raising a few million or something like that, yeah, stay private. But in my case, or in anybody's case, when you're in the automotive business, you have to raise $1 billion. You can only do it in the public market. And the second part is, once you're out in the public market, and you can see why I think the only reason Tesla is alive today is because they're public, because at the end of the day, I believe now they've raised in many different, not only in equity, but also other financing. I think they've raised more than 25 billion. That would have not been possible privately. You can only do that in the public market. And on top of that, you need to be able to get vehicle financing, customer financing, and you got to be transparent. You got to be public. So you got to take all the beating that comes with that. I mean, my experience is, I don't care if investors are, public or private, they're always going to be tough to deal with if you don't perform.
You're right.
Or if there's a hiccup, they beat you up like nobody's business. This is just the way it is. And if you do really well, they'll also try and see if they can get a bigger chunk of the pie. So that's something you just have to live with and find a way to get around. You got to be tough. You got to know your own self-worth and be able to negotiate for yourself. And that was most likely my weakest point when I was young. I gave in to way too much, not believing that I had enough value to negotiate, because you sit there and you want the money. So I think knowing what your value is, knowing what your worth is, it's a risk, but you need to try and negotiate at the right time.
So Henrik, before you go, real quick, your favorite superhero?
My favorite superhero, I would probably say, look, I think as a kid, it was Superman for sure. Then later it became Batman because he was driving some cool cars. I think also when I was really small, it was Tarzan. I kind of like this idea of just the pure human. I kind of like the idea about Tarzan that he didn't really have superpowers. So it was sort of believable that a human could do what he could do, maybe. Obviously, Superman, you can't fly and all that. So I kind of had a few different superheroes. I think, so I've run through a lot of different superheroes.
And then if you can fight the nemesis of the superhero, the arch villain, but you know he'll win, it's going to be a tough fight, who would be that villain you would want to go after?
I guess it will have to be that bad guy in Batman, right? It's got to be that guy.
Which one? He's got a ton of bad guys. Henrik, I really appreciate it. The car's going to come out about a year and a half from now-ish. If you want, you can get the app now. It's $250 to put your name on the list. And what do you think? You put your name on the list now. When do you actually foresee us approximately getting it? First part of that year or the end part?
Oh, we have thousands of orders already from 32 countries, actually. So if you put a deposit now, you'll probably get it very end of 2022, unfortunately.
Okay.
But because we're getting orders daily.
Henrik Fisker, thanks a lot for hanging out with us, and always thanks a lot for being such a good partner to what we're doing at Metal. Everyone, unmute yourself, and let's all thank Henrik. Come on, everyone, unmute yourself.
Thanks,
Henrik.
Thank you, Henrik.
Thank you, Henrik.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Bye, all.
Thank you.